Welcome to the Aviator Zone Podcast. Aviator Zone Podcast. With your host, Captain Felipe Santiago. Flying stories, career advice, and a lot of hangar talk. Let's talk aviation.
All right, welcome back to the Aviator Zone Podcast. My name is Felipe. Today I have a guest with me, George Whiteman. Did I say that right?
You said it perfectly, my God.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming out to the podcast. I really wanted to bring you on as a guest to the show because you fit into a very unique category of our students. A lot of the students that we have here in the flight school, they're either professional pilots and they're pilots that are doing to do this for fun. And you fit into the for fun portion. So tell me about you. What got you into flying and what made you do what you did? I'm not going to share it yet, but what made you do that crazy idea that you decided to get? So tell me.
Well, I was into airplanes since a kid.
Okay.
I was interested more in airplanes than in cars. I also had the fixed idea, like many kids, I'll become a pilot. But I was very persistent with it. I even changed my gymnasium to another type of gymnasium which was required for Swiss Air for when you wanted to join the recruiting center, where they started with 15, 16 to look out for new pilots.
Wow.
It was another time.
It's a different time.
It's a different time. And of course my parents, they said, oh, great idea, but they didn't want it. They didn't want me to become a pilot. They wanted to have me in the family business. So this is how it ended up. I ended up in the family business. But I always knew, an old love never dies. And I always knew whenever I shall have time in my life, I still would like to fly.
Yep. And that's one thing that we see it all the time with parents. A lot of parents want your kids to do something. But if your kid wants to do a completely different thing, they're going to go out and do it at some point in their life. So the best thing is to give them, for me personally, I say, let them be what they want to be and support them to that everything that they want to do. When I started my career, I started very young, obviously. I started flying when I was 12. And I went into the aviation, went all into aviation. And then I got sidetracked. I was like, I want to be a firefighter now. My dad was livid. He was like, oh my God, all the stuff we invested and all this time of driving you to the airport. I used to live here near Tamiami and drive all the way to North Perry to go flying. So it was a very, very big commitment. But my parents supported me in everything that I needed to do to be able to make that happen. And it worked out because in the end, I came back to aviation and look where I'm at today. And again, it's your passion, right? So yes. That's what you wanted to do. So you always wanted to be a pilot since you were a young fellow.
Yeah.
And then the family made you go for the family business. So tell me about your family business. What is that family business? So
the family business...
Because you have a nickname. What's your nickname?
Well, my nickname is Waxmaker. But the nickname happened very late because we had a Far East trading company.
Okay.
And in many fields, the major field was microscopes, endoscopes, medical endoscopes, but also household products, textiles. It was a melting
pot of everything.
Right. Because every generation in our family did something new. And so I followed in the business. And at the end of the 80s, we then sold parts of the business because I was always looking after IT in our company as well. And I saw a thing coming called the internet. And I saw ahead of others, that's a huge danger for a trading company because one day
it's gonna be very easy.
Online, you get all the knowledge that we provided over generations. So I told my dad, I said, listen, I want to start another business as well. And for the first time in our history, I wanted to go into production.
Production?
Yeah. So
okay.
I wanted to produce car cab products because I'm not only interested in planes, I'm also very interested in cars. So I had ideas for car cab products, different car cab products.
Just a side note here, how many cars do you own?
In Switzerland, I have 16.
16, what are they?
And in the States, about 4. The oldest is from 1929.
Wow.
And the latest is an electric car, of course. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say a brand or not. It's American, and it's the best sold car in Switzerland. Was the best sold car in Switzerland last year. So
Wow.
the electric car revolution has taken place in our country.
So you're also fascinated in cars, and I've never really been into cars. Mostly aviation is everything that I've done. So
because you started so early.
yeah. So that's kind of one of the struggles that we have in aviation is the electric airplane.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of technologies coming out. Personally, myself, I think we're still too far until we have a big jump in batteries. I don't think that we're going to have anything that makes sense. Now, with that being said, there's companies out there that are proving me wrong, and they're making it work. I think I saw recently an article that the first electric airplane solo flight or something like that in a pattern. So it's getting there, but it's not as advanced as it is in cars. I mean,
well, if you just look at Textronics that took over Pipistrel, there's a reason behind it.
so that's the company that I'm talking about. I think they're the ones that are pushing the aviation.
And why do you think a company like Textronics is doing it? Because they are looking ahead.
Right.
And for commercial airplanes, I think we're far away. For general aviation, I think we're not far away. Because battery technology is unbelievable what happened. I mean, my first electric car I bought 10 years ago, and it had a range of 50 miles.
Which is still not bad for a car. I think, considering that you drive somewhere and you park it and you wait and, you don't go somewhere for a second and then leave, right? The airplane, it's a quick turn.
The electric Roadster I should get next year, finally, is supposed to have a range of 600 miles. This is tenfold in 10 years.
Well, I mean, 600 miles is like your typical range on a general aviation airplane.
So I think in general aviation, especially for smaller airplanes, I think this will come.
I was thinking about even for a flight school, like for us, what the big difference is the airplane goes out, goes to do a lesson. It's about an hour and a half, comes back, and then it needs to go out. We usually have like about a 30-minute turn, 30-minute turn.
Yeah.
We can't charge a battery in 15, 30 minutes. So it would have to have...
If you have a supercharger, you can.
Well, we would have to
now everybody knows what I'm driving every day.
Well, we would have to pull the... I would have something... I think the way that it would work for us is there was a removable battery, a pack. You remove the pack, stick another one in, and off it goes again. But I think even with that, I think the technology that we have now is for about an hour flight. So we're not there yet.
No, we're not there yet.
But it will come. I think it's the future. I mean, I was just thinking about it, like, how do we even set up the ramp to the point is that now we have to have a supercharger at the ramp, right? So now that's a pole that we got to be careful with. The airplanes are not going to run into it. We have to have like literally a battery charger in every parking spot for the airplanes. But I have thought about that conversation, and I think it would be awesome in the future to get rid of fuel because it's so expensive. Right now, we're paying a lot of money for gas.
Just imagine how much safer aviation will become.
Well, yeah, that's the other thing. Well, I don't know. Lithium batteries are kind of dangerous, but
I think we shall not will be stuck for lithium batteries for forever.
Forever?
I think it will change.
I think so too, and it's just a matter of time. And once that change happens, I think it's going to be explosive. What's going to happen after that?
You've seen it in the automotive sector.
It's going to be.
I'm quite sure it will happen as well. Where I still don't see electric propulsion is in heavy, large aircraft. You see already with trucks, it will take much longer. Buses, you see in short distance. But of course, an airplane has to stay in the air for a long time and have a good reserve, and it's heavy. So for general aviation, smaller planes, I'm sure we are very soon there. Actually, we are there already. But
what about boats? Have you been in an electric boat yet?
No.
So,
but this came actually parallel with cars. And also, again, recreational boats on some lakes in Europe, you can only have a boat if it's electric. Yeah,
I've actually done a test drive on an electric hydrofoil boat, and it was awesome. It's pretty cool. It takes off, like it literally takes off into the water. all electric and everything. It's good. I think the range still needs a little bit more work, but it's gonna be I think it's gonna be the future. As you have a lot more torque. Doesn't make any noise.
Yes.
It's very comfortable. It doesn't smell.
Much less maintenance of the engine part.
Yeah, less moving parts, right? So, I mean, you look at a Tesla versus a regular car and how many moving parts does it have? It has like hundreds less moving parts. So, as far as maintenance goes and just the fact that there's less moving parts, less likely for it to break down. But anyway, so tell me about your aviation. So let's go back to aviation now. And you always wanted to be a pilot as you were a little kid. And then what happened? What happened recently that you said, okay, now I'm going to do this, and you went forward with what you did? So tell me about that.
Well, it started a bit before. I had initially the plan to retire at the age of 60.
Okay.
Didn't work. But you have to have a target. But this was when I started to look around for maybe still fulfilling my dream. You have when you get older, you have everything in your head. You think, well, am I too old? Can I still do it? Am I still fit enough? What are the requirements? So I had to find out this first. Then I decided, okay, if I retire, I'm gonna try. And then I was looking for different types of airplane. But as I always was interested in flying, I had, I'm a very cautious person. I wanted to fly, and I want to fly, and I want to be in the air. But like everybody of us, as safe as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you do a risk management? You inform yourself what is the biggest risk. And I think, even as a newcomer, even I understood quickly, the highest risk are stalls, spins at low altitude.
Yep.
Because you have to learn early, a spin can happen at any speed. It depends on the flight situation.
Yeah, that's one of the, if you look at a graph kind of plotting from takeoff to landing, the most accidents occur on takeoff and landings. Yeah. And the reason why, pilots are low, they're slow, they're in a turn, high load on the aircraft. So that's usually the highest risk in aviation accidents is takeoff and landings. Cruise, very little happens in cruise, and you have so much time to react and go forward from that. So yeah, that's a good point.
So for me, this was
the highest concern. Then, of course, what Cirrus did from the beginning, the ballistic parachute was always something, especially when you are a newcomer. That's an additional safety feature you like. And I said, okay, this would be the second important thing. And with these search terms on YouTube, about 5 years ago, 2017, I stumbled over a little tiny LSA aircraft called the Icon.
Okay.
And from then on, it's history. I
ran into a bag the other day in the hangar. It was on the floor, all dirty. I'm not going to say what manufacturer's bag that was, but I was like, ooh, I guess that didn't work out. So you decided to buy an Icon.
Yeah.
Okay. So why an Icon? I mean, there's a lot of airplanes out there in the market. There's a lot of LSA airplanes as well. I think a parachute, like you mentioned, is one of those big factors. So the
ballistic parachute was definitely a plus. Even more, the Icon's spin resistance, that in the beginning I thought, well, this is just a sales argument. But the more and more I informed myself about the Icon, and I had to say, wow. And then they're focusing on angle of attack. For me, this was actually the trigger. That also how they position. 5 years ago when I looked at it, this was, I think, one of the first general aviation aircraft having the angle of attack with a wing.
Yes.
Showing the wing.
I think a lot of people, and bringing that back, now you bring a great point. I didn't even think about this before, but I have noticed that since the beginning, angle of attack was something very important for Icon, and that was their primary instrument. That's what they put in front of the pilot's face.
Yeah.
If you look at any airplane, from commercial airliners to general aviation airplanes, the number one instrument in their face is the attitude indicator.
Exactly.
A miniature airplane on a horizon the size of this big, very hard to determine anything from that instrument other than your bank angle and your pitch. But that pitch doesn't necessarily mean that you are flying.
Exactly.
So big factor. So the fact that they went to angle of attack, I think was a good idea. And after that, recently we have seen a lot more people adding angle of attack to the airplanes. I think it came a lot with the light sports and the the cowboy flying kind of attitude, that they really put that angle of attack, because now they can really bring their airplane to the limit and decrease their takeoff and landing capability. So I've seen that a lot in that sector of aviation. But even now on other airplanes, they're starting to add angle of attack as an indicator that should always be coming up on the airplane.
And I think it may reduce drastically inadvertent stalls, because me as a newcomer, as a student, I immediately understood this is my wing, and I can see it. I can see the wing, how it moves and how it gets slowed or less slowed. And you have it in the face, not somewhere like an additional gimmick like we all have in the cockpit. No, this is the one you always have in front of your nose. And when you touch down and you flare, you look at that angle of attack. And this is amazing.
Yeah, so, and this is where my disconnect is. When you're coming into land in this airplane, you follow the white line, right? You're coming white line all the way down. But then once you get over the runway, I completely discard the instrument. I look outside now and I just kind of hold off the airplane, and eventually it'll come in and land by itself. But I think it's a great instrument, even for, water landings and all that. You don't have to, on the Icon, I look at my airspeed indicator once.
Exactly.
When I'm going to go put the flaps down, and I never look at it again. So all I do is I look, in the white range, poop, here comes my flaps, and then follow the angle of attack all the way down. Come in over the runway, flare, and done. So, it's good. You're not looking at, on what airspeed am I flying? Who cares what airspeed you're flying with? Just look at your angle of attack, and your angle of attack is where it needs to be.
Yeah.
There's no way that if you have the power setting where you want it, and you have the angle of attack, and you have the flaps down, that you're going to be out of speed.
But when you start flying like me, you don't even get that. I mean, you still think in airspeeds, because the literature I read and whatever. But that flight, that week, changed everything.
So let's talk about that week. So you had the crazy idea of buying an Icon. You bought an Icon.
Yeah, I had the crazy idea to order an Icon without having flown ever in my life.
You hadn't even done a discovery flight, had you?
Nothing.
So you did a demo flight.
Yeah. No.
You didn't even do a demo flight.
No. I did multiple. I think I've seen every YouTube video related to Icon A5 at least 50
So
times.
Icon must be scratching their head, like, how did this guy not do a demo and bought our airplane?
I mean, I had 5 years time to watch everything 50 times. Then I bought a flight simulator at home, the Microsoft Flight Simulator. In Switzerland, there's a company who builds extreme PCs for flight simulators.
That's a big thing in Europe.
Yeah,
simulators.
So I bought that, and then I was flying for 3 months on the flight simulator, which has also a ground school. Then you're on the C-152, and yeah. But of course, the flight simulator I have has VR, so it's very, very. What shall I say? It helps you to really feel
very intuitive
in an airplane. But of course, you don't have the gravity and everything. But it is quite good, and so for me it was clear it has to be an Icon, because I have a place in Miami, I have a place in the Bahamas. Both are on the water. I have a boat, so it was clear to me that's added value to have an amphibious plane.
Especially in the Bahamas. I mean,
and an amphibious plane that apparently, and now I can already say it's true, is not more difficult to fly than another plane. It's quite the contrary.
One of the biggest challenges that I've seen with the Icon is insurance, and it blows my mind.
Yes.
I mean,
But you can top it. You can be 65 years old.
That's true.
You can have never flown an airplane, be an alien to America.
We don't use that term anymore. We don't use aliens anymore.
Okay. Well, for the TSA,
We have changed it. We're now flight training candidates.
Oh, okay, very good. So if you have these specs, I tell you, then the insurance is even more shocking.
Oh yeah, especially having a retractable seaplane. It's all the crazy stuff in aviation. But even for me, it was hard to get insurance for land only. And it wasn't hard, but they wanted it like to see everything, and I have like over 5,000 hours, bunch of high performance, bunch of retractable, time, and it was like I had to prove. I have been an astronaut. Would probably have a hard time getting in. Would have a hard time.
For me, it was much easier. I had nothing to prove, so I had just to pay.
Well, that's the thing. The more you prove, the less it is, and the less the less your insurance is. But
I'm gonna work on that.
Yeah. Well, it's a challenge, but once you get past that challenge, and I understand why. It's a lot of fun to fly that airplane,
yes.
and it. I think at the beginning, Icon had a lot of issues with other pilots because the way that, a lot of pilots came in and thought this was a toy.
Yeah.
It's a toy, but you have to respect that toy.
In the end, it's an airplane.
It's an
you're
airplane.
in the air, and you have the same responsibility.
You need to be responsible, right? You have to
Yes.
you have to wear that pilot in command hat and kind of.
It's actually, out of my angle, it's actually utterly unfair because they developed an airplane which is I'm convinced is extremely safe, also because it teaches you to be safe with all the the few instruments it has. It's so easy to overview everything. They train you on angle on attack, but then some people misunderstood and said it's a jet ski with wings, and it's not.
And I don't blame Icon for that. It really comes down to the pilot. When I first, found out about Icon, I was a little kid, right? It was this design, a painting, and now finally seeing the airplane and going through Icon instructor school, I was shocked the way that they run their program and the way that they kind of send all the pilots through to be able to be instructors on the airplane. It's almost like an airline training curriculum. The way they do it is very professional. They require a certain amount of things. They require recurrent training, so it's really a benefit for, and that's the big difference between an Icon instructor and just any instructor hopping on the Icon. There's plenty of qualified people out there that can teach on the airplane. It's just another airplane. But the fact that you go through the training from the manufacturer of the airplane, you get the little insights. You get to see what's going on with the airplane and getting to know it. So I think it was very shocking how professional they run the program and how they keep it. So I think that was a great benefit for not only for the instructor, but also for the students that come through the program to fly the airplane. So let's go back. So you bought the airplane, sight unseen, never took a demo flight. So you hadn't even seen the stall resistance on the airplane. The stall resistance, the spin resistance on the airplane.
Well,
you saw it on videos.
I saw as I said, I have a place in Miami, and before COVID, I visited Prestige Imports because they always have lovely cars on show, and they had an Icon in the showroom. So this was the first time I could have a look at an Icon
in person.
I was allowed to sit in it, so I saw the airplane, and I saw how small it is. Then COVID hit, and then we were not allowed to travel to the US anymore. And actually, this is my first visit
since COVID.
To the US. And of course, as a foreigner, I needed to get the TSA clearance. Then I needed a flight school. I needed a Icon approved flight school, and that's how we met over WhatsApp and video call. Right?
That's right. I remember when you were still up there. But
to finish, why did I do that? When you're 65, you don't have any time to lose. You want to go forward. And especially because now I'm retired, I have the time. So I said, okay, I know that's the plane I want. Usually when I know what I want, I do it. So I said, okay, no pressure. I need to get the pilot's certificate now. But yes, I said I order it because it takes half a year until you can have a plane.
Which is surprising compared to the deliveries for other companies. The fact that it took about 6 months to get an airplane, that's impressive. You're hearing 2-3 years on other manufacturers, and it's
actually I was lucky because my original airplane I ordered would have been delayed until August or September.
So how many months would that have been?
Nearly a year.
A year. It's still even a year.
Yeah.
Cars.
yes.
You figured.
But well, maybe it's also for an LSA, it's a very, very steep price. But I always tell myself it's maybe nearly a coincidence it's an LSA because I have never flown another LSA. I've only flown this one, but it really flies well.
It's not, and again, they're coming out now with a certified airplane. That's their new plan is to come out with a certified airplane. But comparing, I have flown other LSAs, and the Icon feels like a factory-built airplane.
Yeah,
like something that you expect from a factory. A big factory, like a car, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't feel like something that was done in somebody's garage.
Absolutely.
Or designed in somebody's garage.
Yeah.
When I first saw the Icon and the wings fold back, and I saw the engineering of how the controls connect and everything, I was like, wow, like this is completely new. I've never seen this before. Even to the fact of the trim tab on the elevator. So the trim tab on the elevator, and I don't know if you noticed this, maybe not because this is new to you, but on a regular airplane, the trim tab is disconnected from the elevator, and it has a hinge.
Yeah.
Well, the Icon is composite, and that composite goes all the way through. So you have composite material that bends up and down. And it doesn't crack.
Yeah.
For me, I was like, whoa, how do they do this? And again, what does that mean? Well, you have better aerodynamics, more speed, clean airplane. So that little detail itself, it costs money to design that stuff and research and develop it. So it is expensive. It's not cheap. We're not going to talk about, price, but I think it's, you can't buy any airplane and fold the wings in 2 minutes and put it inside a garage.
Which proves highly practical when you are about to land in the middle of nowhere and you ask them on the radio, do you still have hangar space? And they say, nope.
No, we don't have hangar.
And then you say, well, we only need about 8x2, 8x3. Oh, not a problem.
And that's what we're going to talk about. And that's a great point because that is true, right? Oh no, we can't fit it. We can fit the Icon under the wing of another airplane. So it really makes sense. Yeah. Now let's talk about your repo flight. So you get the phone call that your airplane is ready.
Well, this was what I wanted. I wanted, maybe it's a one in a lifetime experience, but I ordered a new plane. Then from a company like Icon, and they offered me, if I wanted, I could come to visit them and also to pick up the plane, because they would have had to transport the plane to Florida anyhow. So why not doing it ourselves? And this was a fantastic experience. I mean, they did it in an amazing way that we could have a factory tour. And then I had no idea. I was always looking, where's my plane? I couldn't see it, so I thought it's somewhere out in the field. And suddenly I come around the corner, and then they did it like on a show, a booth with beautiful background, and there was standing my 566 Bravo Alpha.
So we have that photo. We're going to post that photo up so we can see it.
So this was an amazing surprise, and then I met everybody of the team, and they explained me the airplane firsthand. It's amazing. And Juan
Yeah, he got lucky. He stole that flight from me because I was going to do that flight.
My flight instructor, he was of course also he was blown away. He said, "Wow, lovely how they do it." And then the next morning, really, we pushed the plane out of the factory. Then it was fueled, chokes away, and then we took off.
Here begins a great story, right? So, crossing America in a little small airplane is not something that not a lot of people have done. Even pilots to this, I fly with a lot of different pilots, and not a lot of them ever, all they did was fly locally. Maybe they're 50, they're long cross country around the airport. But to cross the United States in a little small airplane is a completely different story. And I think when you do that, you realize how vast the America is.
This is exactly. I mean,
And
especially me coming from Europe, of course, we know America is big. Nobody can imagine how big
it is.
And how
Unpopulated.
unpopulated and different it is. I mean, then you are aware it's a bloody continent.
It is. And it's so cool because you got to see the West Coast. You went through the Rockies.
Yes.
See that high elevation terrain. Then you went through Phoenix, desert, right? Into Texas.
Yes.
Right? Now you go through Texas.
That never ends.
Never ends.
Especially not in an icon with headwind.
The headwinds, it just keeps getting bigger. Texas is one of those things that I do. So once we get out of Texas, everything is going to go so quick.
Yeah.
Texas is huge.
Huge.
And it's
Huge.
all that oil, huh? You see all those
Yes.
oil farms
Yes.
going to Texas. And then finally you start getting into New Louisiana, Alabama. Then everything starts getting really green.
Yeah.
And then down into Florida,
Where the weather got bad.
where the weather gets bad because it's it's summer in
It's
Florida in the
summer
afternoon.
and
It's always
humid
gonna.
and yeah.
So let's talk about that Repo flight because I think there's a lot of stories that we can talk about there. You had done this before in a car, right? You've crossed.
No.
You never done this in a
No,
car.
it was always my plan. Like I think many people in Europe dream about doing Route 66.
Route 66.
You know what? That plan has been
Scrapped
because in the icon that was so amazing, and it was already long enough. But I would do it again, and maybe I'm gonna do it again.
I'll go back with you if you want.
Okay.
And this time we'll
But I
land.
tell you, back will take even more time.
But we'll land at Route 66 this time.
Yes.
Have you seen that where you can land on
No,
Route 66? There's a place
no.
you can land on
Really?
Route 66.
Okay, so mark it down.
Yeah, you can land. There's a little hotel there, a motel, a little gas station, and then you
Yes.
can taxi your airplane
Yeah.
on Route 66 and
I
get
ta-
a photo.
I take you up on that. If you manage to get off from the airline for quite a while because you're a busy captain, I take you up on that, and we do that.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Go back and do it again. There's a lot of cool places out west to see, but we also have the Bahamas.
Yes.
And there's a lot to
Yes.
see in the Bahamas.
Yes. Well, this we're gonna do next month, and I'm gonna push you until we do it.
No, we're gonna go. I love the Bahamas. I grew up there as a kid. I used to be a captain on a 402. I got nine passengers plus me. I was 18, 19 years old.
Yeah.
Fly to the Bahamas, 135. Spend the night. I can have a drink. I can have a beer. That's what I had. Beer and cracked conch. That's all I had when I got there. Right? Here I was, 19-year-old, 18-year-old having a beer, cracked conch in the Bahamas, flying an airplane by myself. And then I got back to the U.S. and I couldn't buy a beer at the at a regular store, right?
Yeah, of course.
But I had a great time. I love the Bahamas,
Yeah.
and the food, the views. I mean, the Exumas, Eleutheras, everywhere in the Bahamas is beautiful.
And I mean, with an icon, you have a tool to explore so many outer islands.
It's a completely
Who
different.
have no airstrip, who have no jetty, nothing. But it's beautiful to see everything. And
I'm excited because there's a lot of beautiful things to see out
Yes.
there, and the possibilities with this airplane are endless because there's a difference between a float plane and a seaplane, and it's a huge difference. If the weather's bad in a float plane, you're stuck.
yeah,
If the weather's bad in a seaplane, hey, you know what? Let's go land at the airport, right? Waves are rough, no problem. Let's go to land at the airport. We'll play around another time.
yeah.
You don't have that option. So I think amphibs are really important. especially when you're out in the Bahamas or, where you might not be able to find a place to land. And now you're stuck. You got to land somewhere that's protected and then spend the night on a mosquito island. Yeah. So back to California. So you took off with Juan and you head south because you can't cross the Rockies in any airplane, really. I've done it in a turbocharged airplane and I'm like, I'm not going to test those turbos over the Rockies, right? Now the Icon, you do have a parachute, so that's kind of nice. But you went south and you went down to, let me look here. I think you went to Bakersfield, right? Bakersfield. So Bakersfield was just a stop for gas.
But you must imagine this was my first stop for gas, my first time at a US FBO. Everything was exciting. I felt like a kid. Everything was new.
Did you have windows on or off on that flight?
We had on the first flight, I must remember, we had them off.
Off.
Yeah.
So you're taking off on an airplane with windows off, flying down to Bakersfield, California. You have the coast on one end, the Rockies on the other. You're in an airplane with no windows.
Yes.
What's going through your mind? I mean, I'm sure it's just like a floodgate of information coming through.
Well, here comes again the newcomer. Maybe a year-long pilot, he would have been more excited. Because I said, at a certain point, that plane has a parachute, that plane can land in water, that plane can take out the window. And I said, okay, then it can take out the windows. It took me a day or two to realize
what you were doing,
how unique this is. Because in the evening, Juan had eyes like a panda, and he said, tomorrow we fly with windows.
Well,
but,
yes.
It's like driving in an open car because the canopy is fully transparent, so you really enjoy flying.
The visibility is amazing.
Amazing. And you have, thanks to those wind deflectors, it is absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
But you have a sensation of flying.
It's amazing. I've actually time building with the Icon. I was flying around just looking down on the water, and you see dolphins and turtles and sharks and all that stuff. And it reminds me of a video I saw of this guy flying with Goose in one of these like light sports. I don't even think that's a light sport. I think that's even like an ultralight or whatever it is. But he's like completely out on a chair, basically. He's flying on top of a chair. And he's flying with Goose, and the Goose get close to him, and he's like almost touching them and everything. And I'm like, that to me is what the Icon feels like.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would get into an airplane that's just a chair with wings.
No, I wouldn't.
I don't feel that safe in that, but I do feel that I can, that's as close as I'm going to get to that experience is with that airplane because you're just so connected. And that's why I like our Diamond so much too, because you have that canopy. Is it hotter? Yes. But is it worth the visibility of flying?
It definitely
I think for me it's worth 100%. Yeah. And if you don't want it, then you can put some sun visors up. But personally, I don't care. I want to see. That's why I became a pilot, right? I want to go fly.
Exactly.
So coming down to Bakersfield. So you come down to Bakersfield and you get gas. And what time this is about what time in the afternoon? This is afternoon now, no? Or what time did you get to Bakersfield?
No, it was not that late because we left early. We wanted to leave at 7, but we left at 8, I think. I don't have the flight data anymore, but no, Bakersfield was still okay. We then went on because we wanted to get to Palm Springs. And we had to go down before Palm Springs.
Yep. So this is where it gets
strong headwinds.
This is where the terrain really becomes tricky now because now you're crossing. Now you have to cross the terrain, and so you went from Bakersfield, and the plan was to go to Palm Springs, but you diverted to.
And the temperature got hotter and hotter, and we approached in front of us the mountains. And we looked at them, and then Juan said, I think he wanted to test me. What do you think? I said, I would turn around. It's just, she feels sluggish. And she said, yeah, that's exactly what we're going to do. We turn around, we go to fuel somewhere else, and then we waited because it was hazy. And so we waited, I think, an hour or 1.5.
So I remember this because I was actually following you guys the entire flight.
Yeah.
And density altitude was very high.
Very high. And you could feel, you could feel it.
That's the thing. People are like, learning to fly here in South Florida, you're taking off at 0. Density altitude can be 3,000 feet.
It's still 0.
It's still the same, right? The airplane's going to perform pretty much the same. Now you're taking off from an airport and you're climbing up to, 10,000 feet, but you might be climbing a lot higher, right? Because you're flying to a higher density altitude. So the airplane can get sluggish, right? There's less air.
Yeah.
For that motor to grab and compress. There's less air for that wing to fly on. So very good call, and I'm glad that Juan made you make that decision on your own, and kind of, because that's really what makes a good pilot, is aeronautical decision making, right?
Well, he would have done this decision anyhow.
Well, yes, but
I think this is part of his training to teach me early what would you do, and that's why he asked me, "What's your opinion?" And I said, For myself, I would turn around.
Perfect. And that's exactly what you guys did. So you guys went to San Bernardino, and then you spent some time there. So the visibility, because not only you had high density altitude, you also had low visibility, because the visibility was dropping.
Very hazy.
Terrain.
Yeah. And we were very close to Palm Springs. We were
I
not
saw.
far.
You were like...
But it doesn't matter. And I told Juan, I said, if we have to stay here, we stay here. It's not a problem.
Yeah.
So thank God, a bit later, visibility
improved significantly.
And I still remember I sat there with Juan, and then I asked him, I said, normally I travel a lot with my pre-war cars. And I said, I checked the map. If we follow the road,
it's perfect.
And then he said, "Oh, impressive! Look what I," and then he had exactly the same idea. So that was cool. And that's exactly what we did.
I-10, you're following I-10 down to Palm Springs.
Yes.
So
because we knew there we don't have to climb very much, because it goes
through the cuts of the mountain,
and the visibility was good again anyhow. And so we did the little hop to Palm Springs, not over the mountains, but we followed the road.
So you land in Palm Springs. This is your first overnight there, and they have a Signature flight support there. Did you go to Signature? Is that where you guys went in Palm Springs? So you went to Signature, and this is obviously your first experience keeping an airplane overnight on an airport. How was that?
Well, that was an amazing experience, because there was hangar space. And the hangar space was very posh, because the little icon was between the corporate jets. And it looked cool. And I found beautiful, Palm Springs is not difficult to find something beautiful overnight, but we found a really, really beautiful place. So it was a blast.
The Icon repos are different than the regular repos that I do. Because one, you obviously want to have a place, so you want to keep it in a hangar. And the reason why is, how many people approach you when you land at airports with the Icon?
It is unbelievable. It's the same as if I drive with one of my old cars.
Right.
The very moment the propeller stops,
everybody
says, "Oh, is this an Icon? I've never seen it
in person.
Can I take a picture?" And then I have my standard answer and said, I would be disappointed if you did not ask to take a picture. Then they laugh. It's so funny. This little tiny airplane, but it steers attention.
You can land in a Gulfstream, and we're like, oh yeah, it's another Gulfstream. But you land on the Icon, everybody's like, oh my God, what is it? And they ask questions, and they want to take photos with it. So I like to keep it inside a hangar because of that. That's one reason, right?
I prefer to keep it inside the hangar, because if it's windy, even if you tie down her well, but
it flies at very low speed.
I wouldn't sleep well overnight, so I prefer to have her in the hangar. Yeah. But it was not always possible.
It's kind of when you have your first boat and you have to keep it on the water.
Exactly.
And you're like, I don't want to keep it on the water. What if it sinks? It's like the same thing with the airplane, right? I want to fly. So Palm Springs, I saw the photos. Great hotel.
Great steakhouse.
Great steakhouse. So you guys were eating well, huh? And that's the thing, right? You can either approach this as, oh my God, there's a mission. I got to move the airplane from point A to point B. and make it as fast and hard as possible, or you can take it slow and enjoy it and kind of spend it on, go to nice places and experience different places. But you have been to Palm Springs before.
32 years ago.
So how's that changed? No, from where you has it changed? Same thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
I must say compliments. It is like 30 years ago.
Wow.
They did well.
I've never been to Palm Springs. I've flown over it many times on the way to LA, and everybody always talks good stuff about it. So
remember, I take you up on this Route 66. So then
we'll have to go on Route 66 to experience
and
Palm
then we're
Springs.
going to see Palm Springs as well.
So you took off from there, and now you're heading down. The terrain relieves a little bit here, but then it gets tough again once you get into the Phoenix area. So you went to a little small airport called Gila Bend. And Gila Bend looks like there's a lot of things around there. So not much around Gila Bend. That was just a fuel stop, right? So we got fuel there.
Yeah.
And took off from there, and you continued down to your next airport was Tucson, Arizona. And then the terrain gets challenging again.
Yes.
Right? So Tucson, you spent the night in Tucson?
Yep.
You did.
We spent the night in Tucson, actually outside in the Catalina Hills. Again, a beautiful hacienda, beautiful place. And I still remember the next morning, the takeoff from Tucson. That was epic.
Sunset coming out.
So
I'm sorry, not sunset. Sunrise coming out.
The scenery, amazing.
Was it an orange, very orangey sunrise?
Yeah. I tell you, I had goosebumps all over. It was amazing, absolutely amazing.
So Tucson, now we go back again, and you guys started following more of the roads coming down to the next airport, which I've personally been to, Dona Ana County. Now, Dona Ana, there's nothing around Dona Ana.
Not much.
But it's a cool place, cool FBO, very nice people. Did you guys eat there, or you didn't eat there?
No, we didn't eat much.
It was a fasting flight.
Juan wanted to move on, and when you fly in an Icon, you have two options. Either you eat well, but then maybe you cannot fill your tank anymore. Or how we did, we said, okay, we have to keep our weight. So we could always fill up the 20 gallons, which is a peace of mind.
I am going back to 20 gallons. When I fly the Icon, or any pilot that flies the Icon, the hardest thing that they have is realizing that 20 gallons is a lot of gas. How many hours do you have with 20 gallons in the Icon?
I would say 4.5 to 5.
5 hours almost, because it burns so little gas.
Yeah.
And the hardest thing is to land on the ground with 4 or 5 gallons remaining. You're like, because why? Because in the Cessna 172, if you have 5 gallons remaining, you divide that by 2, you got 2.5 gallons on one side and 2.5 gallons on the other side, sloshing all over the place. That doesn't give me any comfort, right? So, and it's about 30 minutes on the 172.
Yeah.
So a lot of gas, and that's kind of one of the hardest things that people have is, realizing that you have gas.
We landed
probably with 1 hour, 2 hours reserve.
Sometimes once we landed with about 6 gallons, or 5. You don't feel it.
Right, it's just
because for an Icon, she's still a quarter full.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
So Dona Ana, I remember you guys were taking off from here, and it was very hot.
Very hot.
And Dona Ana has very high density altitude too.
Yeah.
So how was the takeoff roll? Did you feel a difference? I know this is kind of new to you, but did you feel like the airplane took longer to get off the ground, or was it kind of the same?
Ask Juan. Yes, it took much longer.
So
and the Icon, normally she's very eager to fly and very eager to climb, and she didn't even want to leave the tarmac. Actually, she took off a bit, and Juan anticipated it, so she went back on the left wheel, and she needed a few more knots, and then slowly
they climb away.
Yes.
I've been there with a 172, and kind of the same system. You got to consider it's 4,100 feet elevation in it's New Mexico. 4,100 feet of elevation, and you're taking off max gross weight. Right now, today, the temperature is 91 degrees Fahrenheit there. I think it was hotter when you were there. And the density altitude is 7,000.
We had 101.
101. So I can't imagine. The density altitude must have been somewhere around 8,000, 9,000 feet.
Yeah.
Big difference when you're taking off from 0 than when you're taking off from 10,000
As I said, during that week, I learned a lot.
You really learn density altitude.
Just by
observing
and experiencing it on the co-pilot seat.
Yep. Well, you weren't on the co-pilot seat. You were on the captain seat.
On the captain seat, but of course I wasn't. Yeah.
So that's one thing that I also realized, and if you ever fly in the airlines and you go to Denver, we got really long runways in Denver for the airliners, and it's for a reason. We need them. And it takes a long time for the airplane to get in the air. We take off a lot faster. We land a lot faster because just the density altitude, it takes a big hit on your performance. So from there, you continue out east, and now you're starting to decrease. You're coming down the hill, right? You start losing that elevation, and you start getting into the Great Plains and the big state of Texas. So you landed in Midland, and Midland, that is in Texas. Did you spend the night in Midland, or no? You didn't. That was just a fuel stop.
Yeah, and we continued to Waco,
Texas.
Waco, Texas.
So Waco, Texas, a lot of things to do there as well.
Especially good food. We had excellent food.
What did you guys eat in Waco, Texas?
Well, Juan, he already saw on his iPhone.
He was looking at the menus, huh?
Yeah. Juan. I mean, Juan, you can follow blindly when it's about flying, and when it's about food.
He was more concerned about the food than the flying.
and I mean, we really, during the day, we didn't have much. So now we had great food. It was super. And then we decided to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Bright and early.
Because we had to tie down the plane outside. There was no hangar space, but there was no wind. And then we said, because he wanted to get back to Florida. He then told me why. And he said, I have to be back next week because we leave for a few days. And then I said, oh, wow, you didn't tell me that. He said, no, because I always said, Juan, don't bother. If it's one day I in Palm Springs, I said, come on, it's perfect. It's I don't know, 4 in the afternoon or what it was, I don't know. I said, leave it. It's too hot, and let's enjoy the pool, and let's enjoy it. So I was not in a hurry. Of course I was not in a hurry. I have nothing else to do.
It's kind of hard for us because, we're professional pilots.
Yes.
So we're very mission oriented, right? We analyze risk, determine risk, and if we can, we fly the mission.
Yeah.
And we have the interest of the customers in mind, right? So, time is money and it costs time. So we're on a mission, and our mission is to get that airplane from point A to point B, and we want to do it as efficiently as possible and safe,
And then,
but
you have,
objectives.
and then you have a George who is absolutely not concerned about that. He's concerned about having a good time, enjoyment. Yeah,
of course.
How it should be.
So and that's a different mission there. So it's kind of having to adjust and saying, okay, we're gonna get there, and it's fine. When we get there, it's great,
So then we got up so early at 5, and it was all for nothing. Because this is when I sent you the picture of him sitting on the sea wing on the side. I can't say the word, but it's PO, because it was bad weather.
Yeah.
And he said, he looked up and said to me, "What do you say?" I said, "It's impossible." He said, "You learn fast." He said, "We got up for nothing." And I said, "No. It's okay." So I could fiddle a bit with my aircraft, clean this, clean that.
You were already waxing it on the way here, weren't you?
A little bit. Because of two things: the mosquitoes. Let's say the insect tar is much easier when the wax is on, and exhaust. Because the F-gas, my goodness.
Yeah, that lead deposits.
Oh, that lead deposits are enormous. So thank God I waxed it first. It was still hard to get off, but I got it off well.
Yeah. And then now you're about halfway through Texas. So it took 2 days to get through Texas.
Yes.
Texas is big.
Texas is big. I learned that.
And then you went to Alexandria, and I recommended Juan to go to Alexandria because the last time I was there, I had such a good experience at that FBO.
Yes.
Alexandria
Beautiful.
FBO. A shout out to that FBO.
Yeah.
Let me see what the name of it is.
Millionaire, right?
Millionaire FBOs are really good.
Beautiful FBO.
Food, service, really good job. It's crazy how nice that place is for what it is. It's not a big airport.
No.
I mean, it's a big airport, but it's not like a big traffic airport.
Exactly.
So they do a really good job keeping that place nice. And you didn't spend the night in Alexandria. From there, Alexandria, that day you guys did a big jump. You went down to somewhere in Louisiana to Hammond North Shore. And that was another fuel stop.
This was a not planned fuel stop.
So what was the reason for the diversion there?
The weather was challenging. And so we had to evade all the thunderstorms. What Juan did perfectly well. Not a single drop was ever on the windscreen. But then we had a near lightning strike, very, very close. And my goodness, it felt like we hit a rock. And this set the ELT off.
Wow.
So we tried to reset the ELT in the cockpit. It didn't work. Impossible to reset. So Juan said, we have to go down.
So you stopped there. We're going to take a quick 5-minute break, and we'll get back to that story about shockwave of a lightning strike.
Yes.
Well, that was a little bit more than 5 minutes, but it was a fun 5 minutes because we just welcomed another icon on the field.
Exactly. That was great.
So
they're just coming back from
the same route that you just did.
Route, yeah.
So I think we left off in a diversion, and this was your first okay, this is a interesting diversion, right? So you were flying around, and this is my understanding of it, my recollection of it. You were flying around diverting weather, and you got there was a lightning strike very close to you guys.
Yeah.
And the shockwave set off the ELT.
But this is, the shockwave was, for me, it was not a wave. It was an enormous bang we felt in our back, in our seat. It was really like if you would, with a boat, you would hit a rock.
Wow.
It's massive. It's massive. And they set the ELT off. So
you diverted.
We tried to reset it. Didn't work. Juan said, try again. Try again. So it's not working. So he said, okay, we have to land. And so he looked for the next airport. And this is where we went to. And then we fueled, but it was not necessary. We could have done more, but actually I was quite happy because there were too many thunderstorms. And then we were there, and then the weather came in, and then it was raining and windy, and so we stayed at Top Gun Aviation.
Top Gun Aviation.
They were super friendly. Super friendly, super nice. And then suddenly Juan comes.
Let's go.
Says, we have a window. Let's go.
You were like, I like it here. I can spend a night here.
and so it was. Yeah.
That is funny. And then now is that joy. I don't think there's nothing more joyful. This is a great trip, but there's still some joy of hearing Miami Center on the radio and actually entering the state of Florida. So beautiful flight, I'm sure, coming over. You can see now the Gulf of Mexico, coming over to Louisiana, and then eventually you went to Pensacola.
Yes.
And you spend the night in Pensacola.
We spend the night in Pensacola.
So you spend the night in Pensacola, and now you're in Florida. So a little bit of relief. It's so close now to being home. But Florida's big too.
Florida's big too.
Especially when you come from the west, because you got to go the entire scope of Florida.
No, that's big too.
And then how was it flying out of Pensacola? A lot of people are intimidated by all the airspace that's around that area. A big area of airspace out there with, there's that corridor and everything. Did you guys go down and flew the shoreline, or how did you navigate through the Pensacola airport?
Well, I was in the lucky position that Juan was doing. So we were along the shoreline. We saw a lot of military bases. It was amazing.
Yeah, there's a lot of military traffic, and I think you guys saw you had an encounter with some military aircraft at some point. That was more like in the beginning of the flight.
This was just out of Vacaville, because I know from the flight simulator at home. I know that there's a military operating area.
Yep.
And we were allowed to cross, but you have to keep your eyes open because they come really fast.
What did you see? You guys saw an airplane, I think.
Yeah.
Do you remember what it was?
Yeah, it was one of these I don't know which type.
But it was a fighter.
It was a fighter, and of course he knew that we were around there long before us, but he was about 500 feet or more lower.
He probably came to take a peek. What is it?
They come so fast.
It's amazing, huh?
Yeah. You spot him, and
it's done.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool to see a military. We see a lot of them out here in the practice area because we have Homestead Air Force Base just down of south of us, and you'll see them and off they go. It's amazing. So Pensacola down to Tallahassee, and I think Tallahassee, you did not spend the night in Tallahassee. From there, you made it all the way down to Ocala, Florida. Beautiful area out there, no?
Beautiful.
No, that wasn't Ocala. You went to Winter Haven.
Yeah, Winter Haven.
Jack Brown's seaplane base.
Exactly.
Did you see the icon there? They now have an icon down there, and
I saw it on the YouTube on the YouTube video, of course. But when we were taxiing to take off, then I could see
the icon.
Jack Brown's but the Jack Brown's
seaplane base. Yeah, that's where I got my seaplane base a long time ago. But a pretty cool place. A lot of nice lakes on that area to do training, so they have a really good spot out there. So Winter Haven, and then Winter Haven, that was your last leg down to Tamiami. Now, for you, it's a different experience than it is for Juan. But when you do this long flight like this, to come back home to your home airport, it's kind of cool. And bringing another airplane to the airport,
safe, without damage. No.
It's, for me, I think it's very prideful to bring another airplane to our base. Like it's like, okay, now we're one airplane bigger in the airport.
Right.
So what did it feel like landing in Tamiami and kind of getting in your car after? Like what was that experience like? Did you realize that you had just crossed the country in a little small airplane, or did it take some time after you got home and like?
No. I mean, I realized that already while we were crossing. As a kid, every year the Luna Park would come to my village. And it was always exciting because they stayed Saturday and Sunday. And the worst feeling was always Sunday night, because they closed at 10 o'clock. So they stopped all the attractions. You had to go home. So that was my feeling.
The fun was ending.
That was my feeling. I would have said, okay, let's do it again. No, these are one of the things you do in your life that you remember. For me, it was crossing Namibia with an SUV for 6 weeks, or rally training in north of Finland, in Lapland, where it's always dark in winter. These are all these things that you never forget.
You never forget.
This is one of them.
And I have to agree with you. I remember my first solo and all that stuff. I don't remember my private pilot check ride, my instrument check ride, my commercial check ride. But I remember the first time that I crossed the country in a small plane.
Yeah.
I remember the second time. I remember all those repo flights that I've done. Those are stuff that kind of hits a mark because it's something that you don't get to do all the time.
It's really adventure.
It's adventurous. It's why we become pilots. And for me, it's something that I never forget, and I'm sure you're never going to forget this story.
No.
And you kind of, the way that you describe it, it's like, well, the fair was done, right? But you're just opening another chapter.
I hope.
Now begins your flight training. You're really the beginning of flight training itself. You do learn a lot in this cross countries. You learn navigation, weather. You get to experience communication, the actual flying of the airplane.
The learning factor, I must say, I underestimated it. I thought, okay, I shall be sitting on as a co-pilot, just watching, and no, it was not. And the learning factor during that week, because you get so much thrown at you, like the crosswinds, like landing and ATC is trying to push you because a jet is behind you, a self-serve
Fueling
at A63 in the middle of nowhere, etc. So it's never high density, altitude, humidity, haze, visibility, where suddenly I had to say, Juan, you have the controls.
And tiredness.
Yes.
I think was one of those things when you're flying so many hours, sharing that workload between two pilots.
Yeah.
I've done the crossing many times. I've always had somebody with me.
Yeah.
And you split the workload.
Yeah.
You can't. It's always funny because when I see a new owner, they want to do everything themselves. I'm gonna fly this thing from point A to point B myself, but you just can't. No. It's just so much work.
Yeah.
And you learn a lot by just sitting back and seeing what happens on the airplane. See how the other person deals with stuff. Just by being a backseat driver, where there's no backseat on the Icon, you're the side seat driver.
Yeah, but I had to look up already the next airport.
The next airport, you get to play around with your ForeFlight,
etc. Then I had it ready when Juan was approaching, so he knew if he looks to his left, the diagram will be ready and everything. So yeah, you always have.
We call that in the airline CRM, crew resource management. And you have crew resource management in these other airplanes too. It always helps to have another pilot with you and that can help you and kind of have stuff prepared ahead. My instructor always, was behind the 5 Ps, prior, planning, prevents, P, performance, poor performance. And that is so true.
That's true.
Even in the airlines, we're briefing our departure when we're on the ground. We're briefing our landing when we're in cruise. You should have that type of mentality in aviation, general aviation as well. Because how many times when you got to an airport, even when you were prepared, you were like, oh, wait a minute, is it that way or is it this way, right? Because they're all different. So having that resource of knowing what it looks like and kind of talking about, I'm going to go to signature, so I should plan on landing here, taxiing this way. You have a plan. Yeah. And, is it going to always happen, that plan? Did it always happen as planned? No, right? A lot of people, when they do this big cross countries, they show me this. Oh, this is where I'm going to go. I'm going to go here, 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 here. And I'm like, oh, yeah? Right. Well, good luck. Right? You have an idea of which way you're going to go, but you don't know what airport you're going to go to.
Exactly. Because
if you know what airport you're going to go to, you're going to do something hazardous because you're going to push yourself to get to that destination. For me, when I do these big cross countries, I point the aircraft to Tamiami. And 3 hours in, I need to land. I'm going to land here.
Exactly.
And if the weather's bad, I'm going to land before.
I mean, I was amazed how many airports.
How many airports we have.
Yeah. Yeah, this is...
Isn't that amazing, huh?
That's amazing.
And the fact that you can land on all these airports and not pay a single dime.
Yeah. Yeah. This is absolutely amazing.
It's fascinating. Controllers. How many controllers did you speak to?
Me?
Well, or one, but in the whole flight, hundreds.
I can't count them. It's impossible.
You can't count them.
Because we, of course, always did flight following, and it's amazing. It's amazing because in the beginning I didn't understand the word. After the third day, it's like nearly when I
you started to learn the language.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a language. It's English, but it's a language, and it comes with experience. I think one of the best things for you on this trip was that you were exposed to aviation for an entire week.
Yeah.
All you did was fly.
Yes.
Took off.
Yes.
Flew.
Every day, 6, 8, 9 hours. Was
a day of aviation. So when people tell me about how long does it take to become a pilot, well, it's 40 hours. That's the minimum. We know the national average is about 60, 70 hours. But when you do it every day, it makes a big difference. Because now it's not only the 40 hours or the 60 hours of flight time. It's the time on the ground talking about airplanes. It's the time reading a book about aviation. It's the time studying about aviation. Generally, I've heard it's about 10,000 hours to master anything, right? So about 10,000 hours of doing something to master it. And that's not just 10,000 hours of pilot time. It's 10,000 hours of what we're doing here, talking about aviation.
I mean,
reflecting on what our
we arrived, we went to the hotel at dinner. What were we talking of?
aviation.
Of course.
So those hours, that time counts. That time counts towards those 10,000 hours of mastery of something. And it adds to your experience. It makes you think and reconsider, how can I do this better in the future? So it's such a good trip, I think, for anybody to do, even if you're not really needing to do it, just to do it just because you experience, and bring somebody that has done it before, because that terrain can get challenging. We're so, especially for us here Floridians that are so used to zero elevation, going out there is a big different world. George, you have a very exciting opportunity ahead of you. I hope you really enjoy your flight training experience, and that's going to be now your next chapter of books.
Exactly.
And then the joy of flying the Bahamas and all that stuff. Hopefully we'll get some videos and we share it with the audience as well. But thank you so much for coming and
You're
for
welcome.
sharing your experience. I think it's very rewarding for people to see that it is possible, that it's not just for the young. Right, you can enter this field at any time.
Yes, because when you're older, very often you're not so constrained anymore for financial limitations. Maybe you have more time at hand, but then you have to use the time
Right.
because time is running fast, right?
Yeah.
So I know I have to, and I still want to do the flight training and then maybe another one. So to keep me not only trained but also proficient, and maybe the private pilot and maybe some other ratings.
I think when I always say that the day that you die is the day that you stop learning.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, the other way around. The day that you stop learning is the day that you die.
Yeah.
I think we should I'm always looking for something new to learn and always something to move forward. And to me, I think that keeps you young.
And flying is one of the fascinating things.
But yeah, you can find a lot of boring stuff, but this is something that you can always.
This is definitely not boring.
And there's so much to do.
Yes.
Because there's so many different things that you can do, so many avenues that you can take this. So, again, I think you were mentioning that that you were sad that you were landing in Tamiami because of the adventure, but the adventure, there's a lot more adventure to do, and you have a very adventurous airplane to do it with.
And that take you up on this Route 66.
We got to get that shot or go back to Route 66. George, again, thank you for coming out. I hope the audience enjoys the conversation, and we look forward to flying again.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
We hope you've enjoyed the show. For more of our content, search on YouTube for Aviator Zone. If you know someone we should have on the show, please reach out at podcast@aviator.zone.